All right. Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Citizens Police Oversight Commission's February Community Town Hall meeting. This month, we are having a Black Herstory in Law Enforcement and Civilian Oversight panel discussion. That's right, it's not history, it is her story. And we are joined by several dynamic Black women this evening that are going to share their perspective on working in law enforcement and civilian oversight. So first, I would like to just acknowledge that we have several of CPOC's commissioners on the line, along with some staff members that have joined us this evening, along with so many of you from the community who were interested in tonight's topic and have gathered here to share in this discussion with us. And we are just so excited to have some amazing women from different walks of life, from different cities, joining us to talk about this topic. And so without further ado, I will just introduce myself. My name is Talia Grimmage. I am the Director of Outreach and Constituent Services for the Citizens Police Oversight Commission. If this is your first time joining us, we are the civilian oversight agency for the Philadelphia Police Department. And so what that means is our mission is to work to improve the relationship between the police and the community. So we are a bridge between those two. And we act as a bridge in a few different ways. We evaluate PPD's policies and procedures and make recommendations on things we think should improve from a civilian perspective. We have a community engagement and outreach team, which I lead, which is responsible for going out and talking to the community about their thoughts and ideas on policing and oversight. We have an auditing and monitoring unit that audits internal affairs investigations. We have an investigative team, and we take complaints against police officers. And so that's one of the things that we do, but we also give out officer commendations. So often we will get information from the community about police officers that go above and beyond the call of duty. And it is always exciting and interesting to be able to highlight them and give them their flowers and let them know we appreciate the work that they do with the community. And so tonight, my co-moderator is Jill Fitchard. And I will just read her bio just so you get a little bit more familiar with Jill. Jill is the executive director of the Metro Nashville Community Review Board, and she has spent her entire career working in the field of criminal justice, assisting the most vulnerable and marginalized populations in Nashville. She began her professional career as a law enforcement officer with the Metropolitan Police Department of Washington, D.C., and previously, she served as the chief criminal investigator of the Nashville Public Defender's Office and worked with the Board of Probation and Parole before joining the Metro Community Oversight Board in 2019. Welcome, Jill. How are you? Can you unmute yourself and read our guest?
I'm great. Thank you all for having me. I'm excited for this conversation tonight.
Thanks, Jill. And so we are going to just give our panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves. So can you just take 1 minute, ladies, and just introduce yourself, but also name one woman that inspires you. And so we are going to start with Chief Inspector Deborah Francis.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. As she said, my name is Deborah Francis, and I am a chief inspector with the Philadelphia Police Department. I've been a member of the department for 34 plus years. March 26th will make it 35. It's been an honor to serve the department. One woman that inspires me is my mother, Barbara J. McDonald. She is the one who set the course of my life because she, of course, is my mother. But her strength, her knowledge, her wisdom, and her always unwavering support is something that I aspire to do with my family and my children. So it's my mother.
Okay, thank you for sharing that with us. Next, we'd like to hear from CPOC's one of our commissioners, Elder Melanie DuBose. Elder DuBose, please introduce yourself and share one woman that inspires you, please.
Good evening to everyone. Yes, I am Commissioner Melanie DuBose. I appreciate this opportunity to share with you. I've been seated as a commissioner since its inception, and I'm proud to represent both the 35th and the 26th police districts of Philadelphia. I'm an avid reader and have been so since for as long as I can remember. However, it was after high school, nearly 100 years ago, that I encountered the literature of Maya Angelou. I found someone that looked like me, spoke like me, and her experience throughout her series of autobiographical books, her experiences really resonated with me. So one woman among many that has inspired me is Dr. Maya Angelou.
Wonderful, wonderful. All of us are familiar with her. She is an amazing woman and inspires, I know myself as well. So thank you for sharing that with us. Next, I'll move to Captain Margot Aileen Parker from the Philadelphia Police Department.
Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Margot Eileen Parker. I've been on the job since 1996. This will be my 28th year, and right now I'm currently the commanding officer of the Special Victims Unit. I would say a woman who inspires me would be my mother. She came here from a different country when she was a teenager to go to college, and she stayed. She ended up meeting my dad, and just her whole struggle. And she makes sure she encourages me every step of the way, and I truly appreciate her for that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. We're going to move on to Lieutenant Tamika Allen. Good
Hello,
evening,
everyone.
Lieutenant. How are you?
Good. I've been with a proud member of the Philadelphia Police Department since 2001. Currently, I work with the Juvenile Enforcement Team, which is under the umbrella of the Criminal Intelligence Unit. And the one woman that inspired me, like the other panelists, is my mother. But in law enforcement, I would have to say the first person to inspire me was Corporal Harriet Farr. She's now retired, but since the inception of my career, she trained me, and the knowledge that she gave me has lasted my entire career.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Michelle Andre from the Albany Community Police Review Board. Welcome. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. Greetings, everyone. I'm Michelle Andre, Program Manager for the Albany Community Police Review Board in Albany, New York. I've been with the board since 2022. One woman that has profoundly inspired me is my maternal grandmother. Despite facing considerable adversity as an orphan and young mother, she became a successful business owner and a homeowner, which has just amplify resilience and determination.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. Miss Myola Smith is here from the Atlanta Citizens Review Board. Miss Smith, good evening. All right, we might be having a little bit of trouble unmuting. Okay, Miss Smith, you're unmuted. How are you this evening? Okay, well, it looks like she's connecting to audio, so we'll move on and we'll circle back. Officer Hickinson, how are you?
Hi. So I'm Officer Hickinson. I'm in the 17th District. I'm the Community Relations Officer currently there. I'm going to say one person, I know everybody kind of gave their timeline. I started on the department in 2007. The person that I say would have influenced me would have to actually be both my grandmothers.
Okay.
From my paternal to my maternal grandmother, they have both been like strong pillars of our family. You know, my mother's mother had 15 children. My other grandmother, my paternal grandmother had 8. And raising all those kids for them to be productive members of their societies, keeping God first, being hard workers, just the values that they instilled in what family means and how we take care of each other, influences me to this day about how I view people and in the work that I do as well.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. And now, Ms. Smith, are you able to introduce yourself to the group and tell us about a woman that inspires you?
It looks like her audio disconnected, Talia. I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Well, there will be time a little bit later on once her audio is connected. Okay. I'm going to turn it over now to Ms. Fitchard, who's going to get us started with our panel discussion.
Yes, I'm super excited for these questions, ladies. So, we're going to kind of do this in a round robin. I know it's kind of difficult. We can see everyone. And so I'm going to try to start with who I see on the screen first. Okay. And so my first question will go to Lieutenant Tamika Allen. And that question, and it's the same question for each of you. But the first question is, I know that one of the core issues in policing, in my opinion, is police accountability and how we protect the civil rights of citizens. And so I would ask you, like, what challenges have you faced as a Black woman in the career that you have as a police officer?
Oh, hello. As an officer, I have had challenges. Some of the challenges that I face is that I have faced in the past with being on a job is with being a young officer is you have to be grounded and know yourself. Once you know yourself, it allows you to do a better job in policing. So you have to have a good base and a good foundation. And that's one of the things that I think I've had, and it's helped me to overcome certain adversities that I have faced on the job. Sometimes you have to have a strong sense of self. Definitely have to have a strong sense of self.
I definitely would agree with that. The next, and thank you for sharing that. The next person on my screen, I'm gonna kind of divide this up a little bit because I'm asking directly about policing, and then I'll go into just as your career as a civilian in oversight, or what it is that especially for the commissioner who is here as well as an oversight practitioner. But Captain Margot Parker, can you give us a little bit about the challenges that you face as a Black woman in this career in law enforcement? You're on mute, Captain. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
That's
I would
okay.
say some of the challenges I face, especially in the beginning, was trying to remain calm and true to myself. As you go along in the years, you learn that you can't respond to every little thing that comes your way. You have to be, like Lieutenant Allen said, firm in who you are and what you believe in. You speak up for yourself when you need to speak up for yourself, and you let people know from the beginning to not challenge you in certain ways. So I would say that was some of the challenges that I had early on in my career.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for sharing that. Chief Francis?
So I'm echoing what Captain Allen Parker said and Lieutenant Allen. Basically, throughout my career, I can say I've accumulated a wealth of knowledge and experience from various situations. And learning from those things, those were challenges that helped build who I am, helped me to understand my value and worth in this organization. And it also allowed me to know that my voice was very important to use. As women in the law enforcement community, it is not an easy road, but my road is easier because of the path that other women have paved before me. And I'm hoping to be paving a smoother road for the ones that are coming after me and that are moving through the ranks as in this department. Law enforcement has a long way to go, and women are always going to experience challenge. And I don't, Black women in particular, our vote is always different. And a lot of people it doesn't resonate with all communities because you got to be a Black woman to experience what we experience. So I'm grateful for all the challenges. I don't want to complain about them because that's what built me and made me who I am today.
Thank you for that. Thank you for this. Is a very powerful panel right here. I can feel it coming. And I'm Officer Hickinson, can you tell me a little bit about your challenges?
I'm gonna say overall, the challenges have been, I'm gonna just parrot some of the other commentary about it. You just have to have values. If you have values, period, I feel like you are able to navigate the space of being a Black woman police officer a little better. When you see wrong things, you know how to call it out. The department does have a long way to go, but they are taking steps. So when they have, panels or discussions surrounding certain topics, especially when it comes to just the citizens that we are supposed to be servicing, it is important just to make our voices heard in those spaces, just to say, hey, this is coming from, my perspective, and this is what I think. No idea is a bad idea until tried. So at the end of the day, I just think when it comes to just relating to how, I'm going to say, Black people in general may police, maybe from a different level of understanding. This city is a majority African American, so our voices definitely do count.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that and your perspective. I appreciate that. I'm going to move on to Michelle. In this career, what are some of the challenges that you face or that you want to discuss?
So I would say some of the challenges I face is I think oftentimes being in a space where being the only Black woman in that space, the use of microaggression sometimes being used in regards to like communication. I'm more of a direct speaker as far as like, I want to get to the point, I want to get the job done. I think people intentionally using stereotypes that they have about Black women, sometimes about like us being angry, as attacks. But what I focus on is really the support that I have. I have a very supportive board, a very supportive department, and focusing on that has really helped me. But it doesn't prevent that from being a challenge sometimes. And I've learned, like others on this panel, that I don't need to respond to every single thing. That's been something that I've learned in my experience.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Commissioner, what kind of experiences have you had that were challenging?
Well, thank you for asking. And the last name is DeBose, in case that was a challenge for you.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
It's okay. I am not a police officer, but I have had a number of career opportunities throughout my lifetime thus far, most of which I found myself in male-dominated environments. So the primary challenge has been to always stand in my own truth and recognize that I come with value and allow myself to usurp, despite the fact that when a Black female usurps herself, is looked at as an aggression. Being assertive. So I've learned to assert myself with grace and stand in my truth, and always make sure those who I have chosen to represent my primary career is, my primary vocation is one of an educator. My primary calling is one of a pastor. So again, the educator is a female-dominated environment with male-dominated leadership. The pastor is simply male dominated. So I stand in my truth wherever I am and make sure that my voice is heard and those who I represent are properly and adequately represented.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And we have one other panelist from Atlanta. Is she on the line?
Yes, Jill, it's
I
the
finally made it. I finally
Oh,
made it, but it's
welcome.
by
Oh,
telephone.
okay. All right. Wonderful.
What a challenge
Thank you,
today.
Ms. Smith.
Thank
So,
you.
Ms. Smith,
Thank you for
can you?
being so kind and patient.
Oh, no
That's fine.
problem. Thank you for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenges that you face in your career?
Well, first of all, I am Deputy Director for the Atlanta Citizens Review Board, and I've worked for a couple of dynamic mayors, and they have always been supportive of the citizens having a voice in government, and I've been fortunate in that situation. The challenges that we have faced, I'm no different than anyone else really, but as a woman, they tend, I know when we had an opening for an executive director, it was always the feeling that somehow a man would be more appropriate for the position to head up such an agency as an oversight. And that was the biggest challenge, but we were fortunate too. Yes, we did select a male. However, he is very open and sensitive to the challenges that women can face in this area. In terms of police officers and challenges that we face when trying to interview them, we haven't really had that challenge lately. In the very beginning, yes, we did, because Atlanta was no different than any other city. Police were not used to someone looking over their shoulders, and I understand that. But we've since overcame all of those obstacles, and we are working fairly well together. Just a few challenges now.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all for sharing. I appreciate it. And we're gonna we're gonna dig in a little bit as we go forward. So thank you guys for just going through this and taking your time and really thinking about it. But we've got probably like maybe 8 more questions for you. So get ready, hold your seats and your hats.
Okay, so ladies, I want to stay with challenges just for a few more minutes. And I want to sort of pivot to challenges specifically with the civilian oversight of police, because I really would like to just hear what you all think. I have been working in this role since about 2019. And I would say, one of the challenges is the fact that oversight means different things to different people. There are quite a few people that may think that, civilian oversight of the police means that you are there to be a roadblock or to cause problems. There may be some perspective from community members that feel like oversight can't happen, or it's too challenging. So I would really like to just hear from some of you to just get your perspective on what you think some of the challenges are specifically with oversight of police. And I'm going to start with our own Commissioner, Elder DuBose. I'd like to hear what you think.
Thank you. Having been a part of the Oversight Commission for just a little while, there was a lot of groundwork that was done prior to being appointed to this commission. And one of the main challenges as we were, as community organizers and as advocates and as just individuals who were representing the community as best we knew how, we stood before mayors and we stood before city officials and expressed our desire to be a part of selection panels, particularly when we were looking for a new police commissioner some years ago. And there were other decisions that were being made at the city level that our organizing team thought that we should be a part of. And one of the biggest challenges we faced is that police officers did not believe that those of us who were not in law enforcement couldn't make sound decisions or didn't have sound judgment or experiences around what it took to have a police department that worked for everyone. So the challenge was, again, standing in our truth and letting folk know that we may not have been police officers, but we had our finger on the pulse of the needs of the community, and we felt qualified to speak on behalf of the community and join our voices in making decisions that directly impact our community.
Absolutely. Thank you. Deputy Director Smith, are you seeing something similar in Atlanta, or do you have a different perspective? What do you think are some of the challenges of oversight?
Oh, I can relate to what she's saying, especially in the early years of our agency opening. We opened our doors in 2008, and some of the challenges that we initially faced came from the police officers believing that how can they investigate us, because we are an investigative model. We do our own investigations, and we have a board that receives the report, and then they will adjudicate the complaint, and we make disciplinary recommendations to the police chief, and we notify the mayor and as well as the council. The police officers were having a hard time believing that we were capable of investigating the things that they do on a daily basis, and they didn't see us as having the background. But over a period of time, they have come to understand that we produce some of the best investigative reports that can possibly be produced, and they have had to admit that. But that was something that they were initially concerned about. They don't have our background. They don't do what we do. So how can they investigate us, and how can they investigate us fairly if they don't quite understand what we do?
Right.
Thank you. So Michelle, in Albany, has there been a lot of convincing you've had to do with some of your law enforcement partners, or what's your perspective? What are you seeing in your city?
I have not experienced that. So I think the difference as well, it might be how long we've been established. So we've been established since 2000. So our community is well, I think, familiar with having a police oversight. The difference for us is that the board was empowered in 2022 by a voter mandate to, provide independent investigation, increase our budget. That changed the landscape because it was viewed as an attack on police, because the community, they wanted the board to be empowered more. So it was like having to reestablish the whole relationship all over again. So it's been more of that. And as far as like investigators, we have a board where, we have prior, people with experience with law enforcement. So that helped as well, I think, with the confidence of we having that experience and understanding of investigation and being able to provide, recommendation on how to improve the process. So I think that helped, as well as like our investigators are former prosecutors, officers, defense attorneys. So that as well has helped. So, but one of the things for us, we have had to prove and continue to do so that, to do a better job as everything, as far as like investigative reports, and the way that, we just operate, and as we should, because I think we're going to, provide accountability and recommend these things, we should also show that as well. It's been, at least for us, it's been more of the budget constraints. Our law mandate that we are not budgeted less than 1%. We have been budgeted at more than that, but we've had to fight for that every single year since the law passed. Because we realized for us, it wasn't enough, considering the amount of officers that we have in the city, that the 1% is just not adequate. And with the change in the law, the confidence of the community has increased. So we've had an uptake of complaints, like 55%. So
Yeah.
keeping up with that demand has been, so one of the second challenges I would say is maintain community expectation while operating within the legal bounds. I think it's been one of the most difficult things for us, as far as, because sometimes what people may want as far as justice is not something that we can give them in this
Yeah.
administrative investigation. So that's been a really big challenge in this environment, I would say.
Yeah, I think many of us working in oversight can probably attest to that. You know, there's a lot of time you are managing community expectations because people have this desire for you to be able to do something specific. And you may not be able to, you know, whether it's because of budgets or having the staff or even having the authority to do what people think you should do. So I'm curious, I want to get sort of a law enforcement perspective. Chief Inspector Francis, what do you hear from people in department, or what's your thoughts on the civilian oversight of police?
Well, initially, the concern was what experience or knowledge do the Civilian Oversight Committee would have on policing, what we do. How do they know the things that we deal with on a daily basis to adequately do an investigation? You know, it's one thing to read something in a book,
Right,
but it's a different thing to actually experience the situation in real life and only have seconds to respond. So that was a concern. Also, it was a concern is fairness. Then there was a concern that some people just don't want other people telling them what they felt like somebody else was going to be telling them what to do or what they cannot do. My personal experience, because I'm going to speak on my personal experience, is that, you know, having an oversight committee, living in a community where we were not always treated fairly. Things were not being done equitably in our communities. And so having the department to be actually answerable to someone else so that they can review what is going on and get another perspective. It's not, you know, taking over policing because it's not it's easier to say you could do something until you actually get out there and do it. So my perspective is different mixed feelings. It depends on where what community you grew up in, what age group. You got to look at different generations as well, because you know, older generations may feel different within the police department because we are made up of so many different generations right now. So you'll get different perspectives based off of where the person came from. So I can't speak for everybody. I only can speak for my experience and what I believe.
Thank you. Officer Hickinson, so you are the community relations officer for the 17th district. So I really want to hear what you think about this because you are, you know, all of you are out in the community, but I know your specific role, you know, is community relations. So what do you think have been some of the challenges with civilian oversight of police?
I think what I can attest to is the concern of what everybody else said, even from their own perspectives of being oversight committees, like officers are always trying to find out, like, where are they going with this? What can they do with this? Honestly, in this city, I think the outreach could be a little better because a lot of people don't even know about their different options of what they can and can't do. So the officers, and I mean, the officers are not promoting it. So with that being said, I just think the concerns that I hear from an officer perspective would just be like, where are they getting their backgrounds to do a thorough investigation? Like, have they gone to like the Civilian Police Academy? Have they gone to any of our trainings to find out, like we do like it's not a VR training, but we do what's called reality-based training. So we're like, have they gone through some of the steps to get a better understanding of why officers would act a certain way? Are they familiar with the equipment that we have to use, or or regulations on how we deploy force or why we would deploy force. So that would be the officer perspective. But I'm gonna say, but from community perspective, there are certain demands that they feel like the ones that do know about it, they feel like the Oversight Commission should be able to dictate what the police department does. So some of the expectations are unrealistic in that aspect.
Understood. I'm going to tag Lieutenant Allen. I'd love to hear what you think about this topic, civilian oversight of police. What do you think? What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
I personally haven't had much experience with the review board, but I definitely know that it takes both. It takes police. Without the community allowing the police to come in and police, it doesn't work. So we need one another. So if it's something that can help bridge the gap, then I'm for it. It makes our job easier, especially officers that are in the field. When you're able to go out there and do the necessary work that needs to be done, when a community has a better understanding and you have a better understanding of community, it just makes things work a whole lot better.
Thank you. Captain Aline Parker, we're going to give you the final word on this topic before we move on. What do you think?
I would say as a supervisor, I understand the importance of having the Civilian Oversight Committee. I sit on a couple of PBIs where they are representing, and it's always, I always love to hear their opinion and what they think about what's going on with whatever particular case it is. And they always have a different viewpoint from what the police officers or police supervisors may have, which is actually helpful. I would say some of the problems police officers may have will be like Officer Higginson said, what type of background do they have? Have they participated in reality-based training? I think sometimes they feel like they're being judged for a split-second decision that they had to make in the heat of the moment by someone who doesn't understand the reality of the situation. I think it could be better explaining done to the police officers as far as what the Oversight Committee's role is and what they are here to do, just to kind of bridge the gap and bring everybody together, because I think they have a totally different opinion of what the Oversight Committee is.
Yeah, I would actually, I appreciate you saying that. You know, you mentioned PBI. So those who don't know, PBI is the Police Board of Inquiry. That is the panel that hears allegations of police misconduct. And so CPOC is 1/3 of the PBI panel, where you make a recommendation on discipline if you find that to be appropriate to the police commissioner about alleged misconduct that a officer may have engaged in. And so we've received feedback from people that they welcome our presence and they like to hear our perspective. But often, you know, when we are in the community talking to people, that's a question that comes up. What's our background like? What kind of training do we have? So I do think, you know, we can work to make sure that people really understand not only the mission of the agency, but also the individual skill sets that each of us have. Because many of us have investigative backgrounds. A lot of us have done reality-based training. You know, and we really are working to explain to the public and maybe police as well that really oversight and the police department have the same goal, which is accountability and transparency. But people just have a few different ideas on how to get there. So I really appreciate everybody just sharing their thoughts about that question. And so I'm just going to move on. And this question is also for just a couple people. Why do you think diverse and inclusive representation matters in law enforcement or in oversight? I will say, working in civilian oversight is not a career choice that's mentioned or offered a lot. You know, you kind of just maybe stumble into this role. It's not something they, you know, mention to you when you're in high school. You know, so I'm just curious. I'm going to start with Michelle. Why do you think it's important to have diversity and inclusion when it comes to law enforcement or oversight?
So, interesting enough, we were actually doing a training to new recruits, and this, you know, we were talking about the importance of it. That's something that we try to promote and diversify, at least our police force.
Yeah.
And when we were looking at the recent research, what we had found is that, you know, communities that had diverse and inclusive representation in the law enforcement, and also had oversight. There were a reduced use of force in those communities, as well as enhanced perceived legitimacy and accountability. And those were, evident in those recent studies, as well as communities' experiences. So that's what we've seen, and I think it's an important reason to promote, those efforts.
Agreed. Ms. Smith, in Atlanta, can you share your thoughts with us about diversity and inclusion, inclusive representation?
Well, I think it's very important because the nature of civilian oversight and investigation of police, and the two are so different, and people are just automatically skeptical of each other and the agenda that each entity would have. It's very important for people of various races, sex, to be included in this process. I think outreach is a very key component, and I say that too, not only because it comes under my purview, but it's important for these entities to understand what the objective is. There is nothing more powerful than to have someone who is objectable and can, that can explain or try to, investigate the things that are backed up through investigation and evidence. And so as part of outreach, what we try to do is explain to both the police, I've at least gone before 3/4 of the police officers with APD to explain our services, who we are, and kind of dispel some of the rumors that float about as to what we will do. Because a lot of them, when they come down to our office to be interviewed, they, especially in the beginning years, they come in there with sometimes an attitude about what this will mean to me and my career and all of that. But we found that when we go out and we meet the public, we talk to the police officers, explain to them who we are, and that everything we're doing is followed by evidence. And that's all people really want, is a fair shake. That's how civilian oversight got started in the first place. And so when you make that clear to them and you show them evidence, we also invite them to go to our website, look at the rulings of the board, and you'll see sometimes those rulings fall right down the middle. We follow the evidence. We try to educate the public. We believe in training, real life situation trainings. We always have that question about how is it that police shoot, civilians in the back? How is that happening? You see someone running and all of a sudden they're being shot in the back. How did that happen? Well, we've gone through training whereby I think it's kind of like CIS training, to show how that can happen when you're running and something happens and you're shot, and how the body can suddenly position itself, and you'll have something that's hard to explain to the public, and that will make the public suspect. Yeah. But we believe in training. Outreach is so very important. Just get before the police officers and present the evidence that you have, and stay before them. You can't do it one time. You have to do it continuously.
Thank you, Ms. Smith, for sharing that with us. When you talk about outreach, I'm thinking about visibility and people being able to see you. And so I'm curious, yeah. I'm going to kick this to Captain Aline Parker right now. I am a big proponent. You can't be what you don't see. And so I'm just curious, you being a captain in the police department, what are your thoughts on just diversity, inclusion, and what was your role like as you sort of climbed the ladder and became a leader in the police department?
Oh, that's a question that I always get. So when I first made captain, I went to the 1st District in South Philadelphia, and I would have people just come to the district just to meet me, because I was probably like the first Black female that was there. So I get that a lot. So once I got to special victims, the diversity issue came back again because I don't think they had a Black female supervisor in special victims, well, Black female commander in special victims. So I understand the role of diversity, but I just want to say that although it's diverse, I wasn't put there just to fill in that box. I had years of experience.
Yes.
I worked in investigations for 12 out of the last maybe 14 years or so. So I understand the importance of diversity and inclusion because we should be represented across all fields, but also know that we have the experience. We took tests to get to these spots. We're smart, we're intelligent,
Yes.
and we have just as much right to be here as the men in this field.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Final word is going to go to Chief Inspector Francis. I know you have worn several different hats and you fulfilled a lot of different leadership roles as you became a chief inspector. Give us just the final word on this issue about diversity and representation.
Okay, so it is very important that we are diverse and inclusive in our representation. We all know that the representation is key in the law enforcement environment. And unfortunately, that has not always been the case. So in my years of experience, that has not always been the case. I have not always seen people that look like me, that was representing me in the supervisory and senior management levels. So representation, when it's diverse, people always want to think of it as just like a black and white issue, and it is not. It's diverse in everything. It encompasses not just gender, it should encompass gender, race, age, and more, because those are the critical things that's building the credibility of our organization. It also builds confidence in the people we are servicing. And it also builds it up in the people that is in our internal environment. So we seem to always want to look at how we're looking on the outside for the external environment, but we're not really taking much consideration of what's going on in the internal environment. So for me, I think that it is important that we are diverse over the entire spectrum and that we are inclusive, because that's how we grow and learn. And we will be better at serving and being committed to what our mission is.
Absolutely. I think that is a perfect segue, Jill, into our next question. I'm going to move it over to you.
Thank you. This question, I really appreciate this question. As a former police officer myself in Washington, D.C., many years ago, there was, not as many women on the police department as we see now. It wasn't the most popular career in Washington, D.C. during the time that I was there in the early 90s. And so the question that I'm going to pose to you, I'm going to start with Officer Hickson, is like, do women and men police officers perform differently? I know that when I was a police officer, I still believe this to a certain degree, that women come to this profession already with a certain amount of compassion, empathy, patience, strength, of course, and courage. But I think that empathy piece sometimes is challenging for men, but I'm not going to be biased. And so, Officer Hickson, can you answer that question? And if you believe that they perform differently, how so?
I'm gonna say from just my experience, it has been the same. I don't think that has changed much. We are equipped to do the same job. We have the same arrest powers as the men. But just being a woman sometimes does help the situation when there are some sensitive topics that need to be talked about. I just have conversations with my neighbor. My neighbor is actually one of the first police women to be hired by the Philadelphia Police Department. And in conversations with her, she's surprised now that we are in full uniform like the men. She is surprised. She said, basically we were report takers. You know, the men handled the jobs. We were just dealing with women and children. And so just like talking to her and gaining experience and knowing now that the police department is expecting you to do everything that the men are required to do on this job, I'm gonna say we do hold the same job structure, rank, all that, but our functionalities do boil down to us being, I don't want to just use the word feminine, if that makes sense, but I think the femininity within a woman does make the job a little different. Sometimes it's a little harder because they take the femininity as a weakness. They look at you just because you're a woman, like, hey, you can't do everything that I can do. Sometimes they go out of their way to, I'm going to say other officers may go out their way to like, I'm going to say kind of dumb you down, if that makes sense as well, in your job position because you're a woman. And then you feel like you constantly have to prove, no, I can do everything that you can do. And sometimes I even do it better. So I'm just going to leave it there with that.
All right. Thank you for that. Officer Allen, I'm sorry, Lieutenant Allen, can you share your perspective on that?
Yes, absolutely. As the officer said, we are trained to do the same job. I've come on a time where I've always seen women in top supervisory positions and lower level supervisory positions. I think men and women, because our perspective is different, I think we do police a bit differently. I think we handle situations a bit differently. And I think it's just by our nature that we do those things. I think it's in a lot of situations, it's a positive thing. Because I think sometimes women have the ability to de-escalate situations. And it can make a big difference. I've seen it make a big difference in my experience with law enforcement.
Okay, thank you for that. Commissioner Du Bois, what is your perspective on this from a civilian's perspective?
I have not walked closely enough with police officers. I do have some in the family, but I haven't walked closely enough with them to get a pure perspective of the gender roles. But in as much as how I perceive their work as a woman, I believe the biggest difference in everyone that is encountered as a suspect, I believe that from a woman's perspective, let me start over. From a man's perspective, they might always see suspect. From a woman's perspective, we may most of the time see somebody's child. And there's a level of relatability, which the word compassion has already been mentioned. So again, I think that we have, as women, we have all of the tools, all of the equipment, but we add relatability and a different level of compassion to the approach to those that most people call suspects. We see them as somebody's child. And I think that gives us someone mentioned the ability to de-escalate. That gives us an edge on that. And someone has already mentioned the issue of compassion. That gives us an edge on that. Because we know that when that suspect or that individual is hurt, some mother, some father, some sibling, some member of the family is also involved in that entire process.
Thank you for that. And Captain Parker, I'd like to hear from you as well.
I think as women, we bring better tactics such as de-escalation tactics. I think we're also more empathetic and compassionate when dealing with victims of crime or just people in the community for that matter. Especially where I work at in special victims, survivors typically want to speak to a female because they feel as though a female is more empathetic towards their situation. And I just to touch back, I remember the first time I saw a female supervisor, it was a sergeant, and I remember saying, "Oh my God, we could do that. I want to do that." So when we were talking about that, that just made me think about that situation. But I think we bring a lot more to the job as far as compassion, and I think we kind of tend to smooth over certain situations where a male counterpart may come in and rally up something, and now we got to come in and smooth it over. So I think we do bring something different to the table.
I agree with you. Chief Inspector Francis, you want to weigh in on that? I see you over there smiling.
I'm echoing with everyone else. We do bring a different perspective because of our nature. That's basically what it is. But when it comes down to navigating to certain situations using our minds, we are on par with our male counterparts, where we can handle and do whatever they can do. Sometimes, yes, we might need a male's perspective in situations because of our vulnerabilities that we sometimes wear. We may see something that we may be looking at, yeah, that's someone's child, but that someone's child could be that someone's child that can shoot us, because now we see it's a different type of thing, and men can bring a different perspective. I don't really like to say that we are better or not better. I just say that we just do things differently because of our nature. We just address situations differently. But when it comes down to being able to be tactical, we can do that as well with expertise, but they don't see that in us because they look at us as nurturers and as someone that should be, that they still look at us as somebody that needs to be protected or keep us in a safe space, where we have the capability of navigating through all aspects of law enforcement in our policing environment. So I just think that it's basically, we can evaluate things differently, but I won't say it's better or worse. It's just that we just approach things differently. We need to complement each other when we are out in the field, because what we can see, and I hate to say this because this is what my husband used to say to me: a man knows a man like a woman knows a woman. Body language means a lot. Women overthink things sometimes, and they look at something or they may excuse it, where they will do the same if it was a woman, and we see things, we like, no, we just look at things differently. So I don't want to say one is better or worse, or we do things better. I just say that we have, our nature calls us to respond differently, but we need to work together to complement each other to be successful what we do.
Yeah. Oh, this is good. I appreciate that. We're getting deep. We're digging in tonight. And so I'm going to give Michelle an opportunity to weigh in quickly on this from your perspective as a civilian practitioner.
I just want to echo what everyone says. I do think that there's a difference when it comes to compassion, and especially when we're speaking to victims of crime. I've experienced that and seen that. I can't really speak as far as more personal experiences, because members of law enforcement that I have in my family is of the male persuasion, so I can't really speak to that. But I do think that we're sometimes underestimated of our abilities, and that can sometimes be looked at negatively, and I don't think that's the case at all. I think women can just do anything that they put their mind to, and sometimes they do it better, sometimes I believe, but
That's right. That's right. Okay. Thank you all for that. I have the next question too. All right. Well, let's keep it moving. All right. So, oh gosh, this is such a really great question, y'all. Let's get ready for this one. It says, what is necessary for women in law enforcement or as a civilian practitioner to be proportionately represented in leadership? And what does successful mentoring look like? And I think we kind of touched a little bit on this, or at least Miss Smith did from Atlanta. So I'm going to start with you, Miss Smith. Can you answer that? What is necessary for women in law enforcement or as a civilian practitioner to be proportionately represented in leadership? And then what does successful mentoring look like? Okay, I'm going to come back to her and I am going to start with Lieutenant Allen. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So as a supervisor, you're always mentoring and you're always being watched. From the second you walk into the room, because it's usually one of you and many police officers in the room. So from the second you walk in, it begins. But I think as a supervisor, mentoring is seeing the positive reflection of the information or the things that you've put out to your officers, and you're seeing the positive reflection in your officers and the things that they're doing, and how they're engaging not only the community, but how they engage one another.
Oh, that's good. Thank you so much for that. Officer Hickson, can you weigh in on that?
I think as the lowest ranking female out of all the captains, chief inspectors, lieutenants that we have on the panel, I think the mentorship piece, it comes from a place of true, okay. So we say the word women empowerment all day, every day. But I feel like the true empowerment is really taking officers under your wing. Not just in a direct way when you're just managing everyone as a whole, but some personal time with officers that you see may need a little guidance. I'm going to say I was fortunate enough to have those female officers that gave me a lot of good advice in terms of how to police, how to engage with other people, how not to take, I think it was stated earlier, now how not to just take everything personal when, because I feel like sometimes as women, we'll get a little riled up based off of some things that are said when it comes to your male counterparts talking about a woman or what your capabilities are, or that person just wants to come on the job and have babies and leave and, sit behind a desk. And then you start internalizing some of that stuff. And then you sometimes do things that or put yourself in dangerous situations because you feel like you want to measure up to those counterparts. So I think the mentorship would be for other female officers to really take off other female officers or lower ranking female officers under their wing, and it's the guidance. I think it's like the same thing, biblical, train a child in the way that they should go and they should never depart. It's the same concept. In terms of recruitment, it's hard to convince women to be police officers as a whole. because they do see it as a male-dominated field. So it's just breaking down those barriers of explaining what their assets can be to this job.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I'm a dig. I appreciate your perspective. That was really, really good. And I got some other follow-up questions about recruitment in one moment. But I'm going to toss this over to Captain Parker, because I heard Officer Hickson talk about microaggressions and these types of things as it pertains to trying to, have leadership and mentoring. Can you give us a little bit of insight into your perspective of what it means to be represented in leadership and what successful mentoring looks like?
I would say successful mentoring is a constant. It's not just during that 8-hour shift. You're always available for a conversation or reaching back to speak and guide. I know Chief Francis does it well. She always reaches out. Even when I first got promoted, she made sure to reach out. And I would say it's always about maintaining that positive attitude. I believe I'll touch on what Lieutenant Allen said. When you walk in a room, people are already watching you. So you always want to make sure you maintain a positive attitude. You don't want to bring your troubles to work. I try to always keep a smile on my face. You'll probably never know if I'm having a bad day. I'll never share it. I'll just smile through my day, but I always make sure I reach back and talk to people and make sure people are aware that we are all women and we're reaching out and we're mentoring, and it's not a competition. We should be collaborating with one another to make sure that we all reach that higher success level.
That's good. That's good. That's a good point too. All right. Chief Francis, I know you've been dying to get to this question. I can see you over there.
I'm just agreeing with what they're saying, because Officer Hickinson, she poured up about women empowerment. And I hate to say this, but it is a truth. I only could be in my truth, is that in our community, law enforcement, women don't always seem to want to empower one another. They seem like they have to be in competition. And one of the messaging that and it might be because I grew up in a family it's a lot of girls in my family. And we always support each other. So that's my foundation, women supporting women. And when you don't see women supporting each other in this environment, it baffles me. But I always want to be someone that is always showing them that together we are a force when we are working together. Divided is what they like to see, because they know that we're not working together and they can keep us separated. To have women it's very important to have women in leadership positions, because we inspire other women and young ladies and young girls to want to be a part of this environment, because they are relevant to be in this environment. It's unfortunate that we don't see that, and I don't see the women empowerment that I wanted to see. Our ranks are very light when it comes to women, and it shouldn't be that way, because I've been on this job for 35 years in March. And if we had started when I was in the 90s, preparing women to move up, we would be very fluid in the ranks. We would not be two female chief inspectors. It should not be that way. It should be about 7 or 8 of us that's in that rank structure, and we should be a force, and we should be a voice, and we should be decision makers that are saying how we are going to go out and interact in our community. So representation is very important. Just like when we say, when you want representation in legislation. Well, when you want your legislators to be, a reflective of our community, why can't the department be reflective of who we are serving? Because we may be a community that is, the Philadelphia may be, mostly minorities and Blacks, but guess what? Most of them are women. And so therefore, why is it not more women in law enforcement that is actually making those decisions that need to be made when we go out into our communities? So I believe that we're not proportionally represented, but it's important that we do. And it's important that we, you know, settle those, whatever those minor differences that we may think we have, and just work together as a collective body to move us forward. I'm all about mentoring. Each one of these ladies on here mentor me in some kind of way. You know, Kim Hickinson, yeah, she mentors me. She gave me a lot. You know, I have to take advice from the people who I give advice to, because I don't know everything. Tamika Allen, yes, she gives me, I listen to her. She don't think that I do, but I do. I listen because she comes in and we have conversation, because that's how you learn. Just like Captain Eileen Parker, I know that, you know, our interactions are very, you know, not as much, but I've heard so much about her that I wanted to make sure that whatever she needs, I'm going to make sure she has it, because I want her success. I see the potential, and I want to make sure she achieves that potential.
That's amazing. This, I mean, we know that in law enforcement in general, the highest ranking women, they're so small and few and in between. And so we have to stick together in order to get anything done, and to make your voices heard, to stand in, you know, in the gap for the younger women that are on these police departments. And so I appreciate your candidacy and just telling us like it is and what's happening in Philadelphia, because I don't think it's just parked there. I think it's happening across the nation in every police department, but especially those police departments, you know, that I think about down in the South where we are now. I mean, it's a very small amount of Black women in leadership. I'm just, you know, and I'm sure that's pretty much throughout the South. So I'm so glad to see you all represented here. And so I'm going to pass it on over to Talia. She's got the next question.
I do have the next question, but I am just going to chime in real quick because I really enjoyed the dialogue with that last question from everyone. You know, society does a really good job of making women sometimes feel like there are only a few slots available. Yep. You know, and we have to just keep each other from filling those seats, and we have to just reject that. There is room at the table for everybody. And I'm going to probably misquote Shirley Chisholm, but I remember, you know, people always say, she would say, you know, if they don't give you a seat at the table, you bring a folding chair. You know, you really have to just walk in your authority, you know, and say, listen, I reject that. I don't care if you say it's only 3 slots, it's enough for everybody. You know, so I just thank all of you for joining us this evening and being here and just proving that, you know, women can come together and do something positive and wonderful. And so I'm going to move on. And the next question has to deal with misconceptions that often come working in these roles. And so I'm going to start with Commissioner DuBose. What is one thing that you wish the community understood about your role as a CPOC commissioner?
May I have like 30 seconds to?
Yes, of course.
The previous question.
Sure.
One of the things that I've heard from my fellow panelists, almost each one of them shared a part of her story that reflected the fact that she stands on the shoulders of someone that influenced her life work and her life's decisions. One biblical principle is that sheep beget sheep. So if we're going to improve our representation in this field, we're going to have to go after the young females, the young ladies, and be a more visible example and an intentional influencer, so that more young ladies will want to be like us or like you in this field. So I applaud you for those that you are mentoring. I pray that you'll do it with intentionality. And remember that as a sheep, you will beget the sheep that look like you. So that other question, what was it?
It was, what is one thing you wish, it's about misconceptions people may have about your role and your work can you talk about what's one thing you wish the community knew about your work as a commissioner for CPOC?
Well, for our Police Oversight Commission, I want the community to understand right now that we are a work in progress and we are moving into our authority. We know full well that this legislation gives us demands accountability, transparency, and investigatory authority. As we are reshaping what was the Police Advisory Commission, I would like the community to understand that all of the unanswered will be answered. And we are moving toward usurping the authority that we have been given through this legislative process to make sure that the community voices are heard. And while we are not anti-police, we are pro-justice, and we are looking to have justice served at every turn so that the community will not believe themselves to be the underdog because police officers always win. So we're not anti-police, we're pro-justice. And I want the community to know that we're fighting and we will continue to fight to move some of those decisions out of the hands of people who may not have their best interest at heart.
Good answer. Good answer. Next, I'm going to ask Michelle to weigh in on that. Ms. Andre has to leave at 7:30, so I want to give you an opportunity just to talk a little bit about what are some common misconceptions you've seen in your role and one thing you wish the community understood about Albany's Community Review Board.
So, so I'll touch on, I think one of the main things I want the community to know is that majority of the people that do this work, this comes from a desire to help and support people, and how disheartening it can be sometimes to not provide them the justice that they're looking for. And that I want to echo that, to allow us time and grace, right? There's things that come from having that authority, especially with independent investigation. So, litigation, right? There are cases that we have sometimes that there might be some civil or criminal charges that prevent us from moving forward. And doing that education is one of the things that we're working on with the community and letting them know, but allowing to understand that, these investigations take time and every case is not the same. So sometimes there could be frustration of it taking too long, in the frustration, why is this officer out? With just anything, we have to give due process. And I think everyone is afforded that right. And sometimes it can be frustrating, I know for us, when it feels like, people are like, you guys are not doing anything or you're taking too long. And we have to do things right and we have to follow the law, just like we're expecting the police officers to do as well. So sometimes I know that could be frustrated. So, but I want them to just know that we do this work and it really pains us. There's things that the community just doesn't get to see. There's cases that I think, I think they would be blessed to not see them because it does affect us because there are things that we see and we know, and we can't talk to our, we can't talk to anybody, even our family members, about them sometimes. So I want them to just allow us to give us that grace sometimes. That's what I want to just add.
Yeah, I like that. I like that answer. Ms. Smith in Atlanta, what is one thing you wish the Atlanta community knew about your role?
Well, I tell you, in Atlanta, we're often, people feel like that we should have as much authority, especially those that are, those people who are out there and they're very passionate about their beliefs. they feel that we should have more authority, and sometimes when things don't go the way that they would like to see them go, oversight is sometimes called weak or a paper tiger. But what I would hope that they would understand is that oversight is still relatively new, especially where you get a chance, those models where you can investigate your own, your own complaints rather than just taking a complaint that's already been investigated by the police and then just reviewing that. And, when you do that, it's already comes from a certain perspective. Oversight is new, we're growing, we're getting more and more authority. Of course, we don't have all the authority that we would like to have, but we are growing and we are getting stronger. And we are collecting records and establishing databases, because I always say to the community when I go out, when you're stopped by a police officer, they take your license. What's the first thing they do? They go back and check your record. Well, guess what? We are building records. We are establishing data banks. Those things are very powerful. Just be patient with us. This is also their oversight. We need to hear their voice. Let us know how we're doing. Get involved. Again, we're growing, and we won't always get it right, but we're getting better at what we do, and we're very passionate, and we are very experienced at what we do. We train all the time, and we meet with citizens, police, politicians, and politicians tend to put oversight on the back burner when crime is high, until that proverbial thing happens when a citizen is shot, as in the case of why we were established as an investigative model, when police shot 92-year-old Katherine Johnston in her living room. That's when you get all the support. That's when you need to ask for it too. Be prepared when those moments come. That's an unfortunate situation, but when you're trying to build oversight, then be prepared to move whenever unfortunate situations even raises its head.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Real quick, I just want to say thank you to Michelle. Andre, thank you for joining us tonight. I know you have to hop off in just a couple minutes, but I did want to take the time to thank you. You were very gracious and said yes right away when we asked you to join us tonight. And we have certainly enjoyed hearing your perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, real quick before we move on to the next question, Captain Elaine Parker. So we're talking about misconceptions, and I know that you were at SVU. And I'm sure, a lot of people, when they hear those three letters, they think of Law and Order, Benson and Stabler. They think that things are wrapped up in 40 minutes. And I know that's not how that role is. So can you just talk a little bit about maybe what you've had to explain to the community or to other people about your role in the Special Victims?
That's always one of the topics. No, we don't have an hour to solve things. That's always one of the big topics. And sometimes people may say, oh, I see on TV where they did such and such. And you just have to basically explain, like, sometimes our investigations take time. It doesn't take a day. We don't have CSI equipment. We don't have the projector screen that pops up and all the information comes back. Like, we're working on it. The investigation is being completed, but it's going to take some time. Sometimes our sexual assault exams take a while to come back. And sometimes it's just difficult trying to explain those different areas to the citizens, because in their mind, they know they watch TV and this is what they see.
Yeah.
So that makes it kind of difficult when you're fighting against that. But once you talk to them and explain to them the process, I think they more appreciate that. By you sitting down just explaining it to them.
Yeah.
I find that makes a difference.
That's I know it's a tough job, educating people about that, because people think they know how things go.
Yeah, they're like, it's supposed to be here. I saw it on TV.
Right. Yeah, they're like, oh, you can't dust for prints? They just think that how things are on television is not how things work in the real world. I might violate my assignment briefly. Lieutenant Allen, I know you work with juveniles. I'm sure you have to do a lot of discussion with them to explain how policing works. Like, can you just share maybe one story or something just to kind of give us your perspective, and then we'll move on.
So yes, I work in a juvenile enforcement team. So we partner with probation. One of the things that we do is we serve warrants for juveniles, but we've also had other partners such as the sheriff's and the AG's office. We now serve warrants for adults as well. But in dealing with the juveniles, it's a lot of discussion. It's a lot of repeat. It's constant discussion because what you're trying to do is maybe to get them to understand. And some of the juveniles that we encounter, they're not in situations where they're getting much guidance other than maybe when we come into the home to kind of maybe provide a little bit of that. Unfortunately, our job is now require us that we're taking more juveniles out of the home because the judge is required that they come to see them. But that's what it has become. It's become more of a serving warrant to taking juveniles out of the home. But when we do engage them, we're trying to have those positive conversations with them.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, Jill, you are up next.
Okay. All right, we've had a little bit of discussion about this. I mean, I've heard from Commissioner DuBose and Officer Hickson, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we motivate younger generations of Black and Brown women to join law enforcement or oversight. And I mean, we've struggled in Nashville with this ourselves. And so we've seen an uptick in women joining the ranks and going through the academy in the process. But it's still a struggle. And so women have they've come from as lateral transfers, but they've also come from other states because Nashville is one of the cities where a lot of people are kind of migrating here. And so, but we still find it, you know, just like any other major city, difficult to draw women as recruits and to join the ranks in law enforcement. So can you all talk about how you think we could motivate? I think that this would be a conversation that we can all share and have some insight in. How do we motivate younger generations of Black and Brown women to join law enforcement or to be civilian practitioners in the world that we live in when there's always so much negativity? There's not a whole lot of collaboration and support, you know, at times. At least that's what, you know, what we hear. And so I'm going to start with the commissioner. Commissioner DuBose, do you have any insight into that? You brought so much. I just want to say before I get you started, you said what I thought was really, we need to be more visible and be intentional influencers. And so I just thought that was a tremendous segue into this and inviting you back to speak a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure other than that point, increase our visibility and have those discussions with our young women. Interestingly enough, as an educator, I'm always asking young people about their career thoughts and their career goals. And I remember 100 years ago when I first started teaching, children had an immediate response. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a police officer. I want to be this. I want to be that. But nowadays, they don't have such an immediate response. And when they do, it's a ball player or a rapper. So we're going to have to be really intentional about showing them how this is still an honorable profession. And one of the things I realized in my community is that the perception of police officers in general is so negative. They've seen their parents and siblings, older siblings, being thrown against a wall, being arrested, knocked down on the ground. All of the media images and profiles of people of color are so negative that it is becoming increasingly more difficult to convince our young people that this is an honorable profession, males and females, that it is an honorable profession And it is one that will bring a level of reward should you venture into it. So all I have in terms of a response to this question is that we have to be more intentional. And one of the things that I'm doing to express that intentionality is I'm going to bring training into my summer camp. And for 7 weeks, we've been looking for 13 years for police officers to come in and talk to our children. Everywhere I've lived and run a summer camp, we have police officers that have been engaged. In Philadelphia for 13 years, I've been asking the 26th, and I've gotten nothing. So I'm going for a different approach. Talia, I'll call you tomorrow. I'm going for a different approach, but I'm really looking for officers, male and especially female, to come where the children are and show them, demonstrate to them, create that thirst, create that hunger, create that desire to serve our community in that way.
Thank you so much for that. I'm going to move right over to Lieutenant Allen, since she's working with the young people and, sees them right there where they are. How do you think that we would be able to do this to pull in more young Black and brown women in this profession?
As to kind of piggyback off of what the commissioner said, letting them see you. Just from my own experience, one of the reasons why I wanted to do policing was seeing women in uniform. Women actually do the job, and that was part of the influence on me wanting to do this job. So I think that at its core is one of the things that can leave a good impression. I know my job takes me out to the field a lot, so I'm on the street a lot. And a lot of times young children are speaking and saying hello and interacting. And that's right where you get them. You're saying hello right back to them. And just starting those little conversations from when they're young.
Thank you for that. And I want to go right to Chief Francis. I know that you've been doing this for a long time, almost 35 years. And have seen, I'm sure, through those many years, a change in how it looks. I'm sure there's more women now than it was when you joined. But how do you think that we continue to move people into this profession? And what would be some of your ideas or influence or just information that you could share with us in regard to that?
Just like what the commissioner said, DeBro said, we have to be intentional about our representation and how we're interacting with our youth. We are competing with a lot of things now: social media, negative press, yes, basketball. Everybody, boys and girls want to be basketball players and rappers. And I mean, we have a lot of things that are taking their minds and not really giving them anything like that is valuable, nourishing to them, to make them want to see it's something beyond what they're seeing on social media, Facebook, Instagram, just whatever, all these little things, Snapchat. But when I was growing up, we had police officers that were in our neighborhoods. We actually had a police officer that crossed us at the corner because we didn't have a school cross. I was a safety, so I would say safety. I thought I was a miniature police officer being a safety with the police officer. So, but I'm also a second generationer, so that also had a positive influence on me as well. But it's also not only just talking to the youth, we got to also talk to the parents, because they are the ones that have the most influence over their children. And it could be an influence that, what are they saying in their households? What is their discussion about policing? Now, the commissioner, you said and I'm curious because you said you've been asking for 13 years for police. What district is this?
26, second and third.
I know exactly what the 26.
Yeah, we've been asking for them to come in. And I'm a former principal. So in my schools, I've had police officers come in, they mentor. I have pictures of them sitting with students doing projects and having conversation, because it's been my perspective, if they see you we don't have so much community policing in our city, but if they see you, edge will be taken off. If you're conversing with them and you're saying, hey, Jeff, and hey, Officer so-and-so, then the edge is taken off. The expectation is different. But I have been trying for 13 years to get that district to come to us.
So we are going to look, well, I'm gonna tell you, I'm going to look into that because my grandson lives in the 26th district. So and he was raised in that area. But it's very interesting that you would say that because there's so many other areas that they have so much police participation. And it's kind of interesting that this one district, if you're asking for their support, why they're not supporting. So that's a conversation that needs to be had with, the 26th district community relations team and also, the inspector, the chief, like what is going on in the 26th that they don't participate in community events? Maybe, I don't know, it might not be getting in the right hands, but we need to find out. And I will look into that for you.
I'd appreciate it. Give me your name again.
Deborah Francis.
Okay.
And you, I'm sure she will make sure you get my information.
Yes, ma'am. I'll connect the two of you offline.
Yes.
Thank you for that. I appreciate, there's a lot. That was a lot to unpack. There's so much to talk about to get people motivated in this career field, especially like you said, when we're competing with social media, other professions where they feel like they got to blow up real fast. And this is like, because so it's hard to compete with social media, even in just anything that we do as for just regular, like you're in law enforcement, we're civilian practitioners, and to even get people who want to have to do this work on the civilian side, from whatever experiences they're hearing about. We don't know what it is, but just to find qualified candidates to do this work, it's just been a difficult thing for us down here as well. So I'm going to pass it over to Leah because we are kind of getting close to our time. And so for the last question to Leah, I give it to you.
Okay. All right. So this last question, you do not have to answer with a law enforcement mind or an oversight mind. This is just about you as an individual. So here is the question. Imagine you are talking to your teenage younger self. What would you say to her knowing what you know now? And so I will just go first. What I would say to little Talia is just hang in there. You are going to like the lady that you turn into and the woman you become. So I'm going to ask, you know what, Jill, I'm curious. I want to hear from you. Let's start with you, Jill. What would you say to little Jill?
Okay. As I thought about that question because I've seen that question for a while now when I'm looking over it, I would say just be courageous. I thought, in my time, even as in law enforcement, that I was walking in this courage. And I'll say that I did have a person that I looked up to on our police department. Her name was, at the time, she was Lieutenant Cheryl Peacock. And so I don't know where she is now, but her and a couple other officers, Black women, were mentors to me, gave me advice. But I would say if I had to go back into my teenage years, I would say to be courageous, to be fearless, and to walk in your own truth and authenticity. And I have taken that away now. I think I'm more authentic and genuine in the things and how I approach this work and how I approach others. I have a staff here, and I can tell you that I try to keep them motivated, empowered, because, as someone said earlier, we have to stick together. There's not a whole lot of us doing this work. And so the more that we can stick together and stand with each other and support one another, I think the better we are. And so it would be to be fearless. That would be it. Okay, I like that. And this question is for everyone. So everybody sort of think and prepare yourselves to give an answer. Ms. Smith in Atlanta, what would you say to a teenage Myola Smith?
Well, I would tell her that speak up if you have something important to say. Silence can make you angry. But you don't have to fight every battle to win the war. That was given to me by a police chief Listen, Myola, you don't have to fight every battle. You're going to wear yourself out. But that was a young lady who was just finding her voice. So she was determined all of a sudden to just start saying everything. But because I had maybe become angry.
Yeah.
But I would say speak up at the time that you have something important that you feel needs to be said. Don't remain silent.
Okay, I like that. I like that. And even the part
And can I
about,
just say something else when it
oh, sure, yes,
when it comes
please.
to motivation, some of the things that we meet young people where they are, and then somebody said something about talking to the parents. We have what we call an activity book that we have designed for elementary and the beginning part of middle school. And it is an activity book to promote conversation about law enforcement, but it's a book to be done with the parents to start that whole conversation about police and law enforcement. And also we every day we post to social media posing those questions about things that are going on and what are their feelings. We use all of popular social media. We also have an art essay contest. There was a time where we had a female mayor, we had a female president of city council, and a female chief of police. And we had our art and essay contest that year. And when we received the entries, we had a lot of entries from young ladies that had themselves dressed as a police officer, but with a dress on, to promote, to indicate that they were females. So it's important to reach them at their young age and start talking to them about, the importance of serving their communities and also considering law enforcement and getting involved in their community. Somebody said, the justice you have in your community is what you have is indicative of the time you've invested. So I think that's very important to start reaching out to them at a young age. And we also have a mascot, a superhero that goes to our summer camps and talk about police interaction and other topics regarding police engagement.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for that wisdom.
You're welcome.
One thing you mentioned that I just want to take away, you said you don't have to fight every battle. And I heard someone say one time, there are some fights not worth fighting, even if you win. And there are some fights you gotta have, even if you lose. And knowing the difference between those two is wisdom. So thank you for sharing that. Officer Hickinson, teenage Kimberly, what would you say to her?
You don't know everything. Growing up, I always was very talkative, a little bit argumentative. Then it became a time where I would get on my report cards. She's a great student, but she talks too much. So then I transitioned into being quiet and internalizing everything of where I always had an answer. So from that, I decided I'm going to be a lawyer. So it was like, this is what I'm going to do. But that's not where I was supposed to be. I feel like as much as I thought I knew where I was going, where I ended up, I really believe was better. And again, where I was supposed to be. When I started this job, I had just graduated college, and the city had a freeze on hiring officers for 2 years. So there were officers that were in my class that were like, how'd you get in the class so fast? Because it was a 6-month turnaround from the time I started to the time I actually got on. And where I ended up and where I was supposed to be, I feel like that was God. That I was on my path and I didn't know it. But young Kimberly would have thought, nah, I would never end up there. I would never I never thought to be a police officer, didn't have much interactions with them. It was just respect the law, and that was it. Like, my family life, again, we did not have like drama with the police or anything like that. So we didn't have people that, you know, experienced some things that the commissioner stated. So I just had a very blah perspective of the police. And then look at me now. I love what I do. And I just could say, you don't know everything. So
Okay. Lieutenant Allen, what would you say to your younger self?
I would say, stay focused. You're gonna get there, and you will find your calling.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, Captain Alan Parker, what would you say to teenage Margot?
I would say, stop doubting yourself. Don't let the naysayers get you down. Set your goals and stick with it.
yeah.
Good. Okay, Commissioner Elder DuBose, what would you tell your younger self?
Well, as a teenager, I felt, well, first of all, I was the fifth of 8 children. And for the most part, I didn't feel seen. As I have gotten older, I am now totally blind. And what I would tell my younger self is to stay focused, use that great pure wit to stand in your truth. Don't let anybody deny you or deny people that for which you stand in the gap. Don't let anybody deny you or them the ability to be their authentic selves. And even though one day in your mid-50s, you're going to go blind, you will not have eyesight, but your insight without ability to compare.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I see Chief Inspector, you're clapping. You're going to have the final word before we open the floor to some questions.
What would I say to my younger self?
Yes,
I'd say,
ma'am.
Deborah, go to law school.
Okay.
That's what was my original plan. Go to law school, girl. No, well, believe in yourself and your abilities, and remember that you are doing a great job. And don't let minor issues bring you down, and to surround myself with people who appreciate me, know my worth, and don't waste my time on those small things. And with people who don't even care about me, don't waste my time in those areas, and keep moving and never stop. Just keep moving forward, because there is no limit to what I can do. I only limit myself. So don't do that. And I would say it to young Deborah. Do not put limits on what your dreams are.
Wonderful, wonderful. That is a nice way to kind of sum up our discussion this evening. I wish we had another hour. We had a bunch of questions we didn't even get to, but we have to do this again. It does not have to be Black History Month. We can get together anytime to just to talk to each of you a little bit more. I would really, really love that. We did have a question or a comment from one of our other commissioners. Commissioner Rosara Thomas represents the 15th district. She's one of our commissioners. I believe she had a question for the panel or a comment. Commissioner Thomas, how are you?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, I don't have a question. I do have a comment, and I want to share with the chief inspector, with the lieutenant and the captain and the police officer. I am one of 2 commissioners that did attend the Civilian Police Academy. I am also one of the commissioners that did a ride-along. I happen to be, yes, thank you, Inspector, Chief Inspector. My ex-husband was Chief Inspector Keith Sadler. Yeah. And I was very good friends with Margie and Maria Watson, who were one of the first identical twins on the Philadelphia Police Department. So I know both sides, and I had a son when I decided to become to apply for commissioner. He was afraid for me, and not knowing that right before I was sworn in that I would lose my son Moses to a horrible accident here in Philadelphia. So I want you to know that as one of the commissioners, I want to attend the PBI. I want to see as much as I can see and learn as much as I can learn. There is, you know, people would think that I did this was, you know, to get back because I am a survivor of police officer involved in domestic violence, and it caused me 2 retinal detachments. But I tell you, I have nothing but the utmost respect, And I always say this, and along with my co-commissioners and to the staff at CPOC, we are here to work with our community, to work with our police department, to come to some resolution into what's going on and what has happened on our streets in regards to our young men. So I want to thank you. I don't know if you can see me. I can see all of you, but thank you so much. And you make me proud because, you know, I am a woman of color, but when you see all the white hair, you try to figure out, well, you know, but I am so proud of you, my young daughters, because you look like you're my daughter's age. And thank you so much. But I want you to know that as one of the commissioners, along with Commissioner Elder Du Bois, that when I did that ride along, I was in the midst of a shooting, and I said, oh Lord, not even the vest is going to protect me, but I understand, and thank you. Thank you for everything. But I was going to show you my certificate because I'm proud of my certificate when I, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas, for sharing that with us. She mentioned PBI. I just want to briefly let everyone know, if you go to our social media, we do post the PBI dates, some of the ones that are open to the public, if anyone is interested in going to see what that process looks like. And also, Commissioner Thomas mentioned the Civilian Police Academy. And so if you're in Philly, they actually have a class that they are recruiting for now. It gives everyone an opportunity to learn a little bit about policing, see what officers go through. They give you the reality-based training. And I will say, CPOC, we have a standing lecture that we give to every Civilian Police Academy class to teach them about oversight, the history of oversight in Philly, and just empower people to become more involved in this process.
Yes.
Let me see, did we have any other questions from any attendees?
Yeah, we actually got one from Commissioner Bennett. It says,
Okay, sure.
It says, good evening. I see you each all as powerful figures with the same mission as myself. My question is, what can a male do to support you in your prospective positions?
That's a good question. Does anybody want to go first?
I would say be compassionate, understanding, and know that we like to be included. Sometimes our male peers will think they're including us, but they're not. They're excluding us in certain conversations. We get excluded in certain opportunities in professional development, in assignments. So just keep in mind that you do have some females that are capable of doing the same or maybe better jobs than some of our male counterparts. So we just need your support in seeing us.
And I would just add on and listening to us, because we do have a voice. Listen to what we have to say. Listen to what we have to say. Our opinions matter.
Okay, Officer Hickinson, your hand's raised.
I'm just gonna go with general respect. Just the respect that you would give anybody else in terms of maybe, like, you know, on a department, your rank structure, like, you know, a deputy commissioner, a police officer, however we fall, I just think it's a general principle of respect.
Yeah. Okay. And I would just add in, hold your partners accountable. You know, when you're talking and you're around and you hear
Oh,
somebody say
absolutely.
something that is divisive, that's not true, something that is misinformed, or something that is hateful, it's okay to check each other, you know, in love. So when you hear somebody saying something, hold them accountable too.
Well
So
said.
we are right at time. It's 8 o'clock. Again, thank you. Jill, yes, you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something before we close out because everything was so rich. I just wanted to give everybody just a quick recap. I heard Lieutenant Allen say to stay grounded and know yourself. So this is advice for those who are listening. Captain Parker said, remain calm and always speak up for yourself. We're talking about her story and an empowerment. Chief Francis said, your voice is important, so use it. Officer Hickson said, have values and call out your concerns, which is another, like, speak up for yourself. Michelle, she's not there, but she said, be supportive of one another. And then Commissioner Du Bois said, always stand in your truth and don't let anyone deny you. And so, I mean, that's like closing out on that. Those are values. Those are words of wisdom. That is empowerment. And I'm just very excited for just being the ability to be here amongst this panel was an amazing experience for me. I thank you guys for working through this with me because I was a little nervous, but I appreciate you. I hope that you all stay safe, blessed. You all are some beautiful women, had amazing things to say. And I'm just super, super excited to be in your presence and doing this work with you, alongside you, and especially the host. Can we give her a round of applause? Was she not amazing tonight? Aaliyah, we talking about you.
Amen.
Oh, I'm looking, where is she? Okay. Yes, a round of applause for all of us. And also our attendees for joining us this evening. Thank you for sitting patiently. It was a long evening, but it was rich. It was a conversation we needed to have, and I'm looking forward to part 2 at some point. So thank you to PPD, of course, to our oversight peers in Nashville, my co-moderator, Jill, Atlanta, Ms. Smith in Atlanta, and of course, Michelle in Albany, and our very own Commissioner Du Bois from CPOC. Thank you so much. This recording is going to be sent out, so it's going to be on YouTube, and I'll send it to everyone just in case you want to share it, in case someone should have been here tonight and wasn't able to join us. But thank you again, and we will see you next month at our next community meeting.
We also added in the chat, if you're not already, please sign up for our mailing list. You can do so by following that link. And thank you all for joining us tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.